Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the truth about Amtrak sleeper cars. Alright guys, so you already know that we have been in Amtrak sleeper cars probably hundreds of rides now. Nearly every sleeper car train route that they have, and we have a lot of experience under our belts, and we want to talk a little bit more about really digging into the truth of actually being in a sleeper car on an Amtrak train.
Yeah, one thing that we get a lot is when we are on a train, people come up to us and say, it's our first train ride. We were so surprised by some of these things. And so we want to kind of unpack that for you so you won't be surprised and learn that, there are some pros. We'll often talk about the pros. We're going to talk about some of the cons because there are some bad things to do with Amtrak sleeper cars. We're going to talk about those too. So let's jump into some of the pros first. And the very first one is that you do have a ton of privacy over being in coach class.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to have that separation from, whatever's on the other side of the door. And then you also have the bonus, of course, of laying all the way flat in those beds in the sleeper cars, whereas in coach you're going to be reclining. It's a pretty good reclining seat. No complaints really for a reclining seat, especially if you compare it to an airplane. But to be able to lay all the way down with your pillow is really nice in the sleeper cars.
Yeah, I remember the first time we got into a sleeper car, it was a roomette, and I laid down and I thought, this is really nice. This isn't too bad. I really don't like sleeping on planes. It's such a far superior experience. So that is a pro, being able to lay flat. Next one is that you do have access to a personal assistant in your sleeper car.
Yeah, it is nice to have the attendants on there, and I like that the attendant is just per sleeper car, like each sleeper car has one, because that way it doesn't feel like, they're tending to 50 rooms instead of like 14 rooms in the sleeper car. So it is nice to have the attendant, especially if you have special needs, or if you're not able to make it to the dining car and you need to bring you your meals or different things like that, assisting you on and off of the train and just keeping you updated with information throughout. So it is nice to have the attendant, the personal attendant for your sleeper car.
Next one is going to be the meals, and the meals are included with your ticket. That is a big pro. In my book, you'll get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you can eat those in the dining car or in your room. Now, we've been on trains all over the world, and I have to say, there's only one other train system that rivals the food on Amtrak, and that's in Canada, Via Rail. Their food is also very good, but really nowhere else in the world at this price point. Sure, you can go on a luxury $30,000 train ride, get some great food, but at this price point, most of the other trains are just serving you a continental breakfast, and there is no meal. There's no lunch, there's no dinner, so it's not even comparable. Or you have to pay extra for it on top of your ticket. So the meals being included and them actually being quite good, better than airline food, I would say. We always say it's a little bit better than airline food, not quite as good as cruise ship food. I think it's a pretty big pro.
Yeah, I think it is a really big pro because it's something that you don't have to worry about going down and competing with everybody else on the train, because there's a lot of passengers in the coach cars. A lot of passengers. And if everybody on the train is having to go down to the cafe, they're going to consistently run out of stuff, and it's just a pain to have to deal with that, whereas you don't have to think about it, because if you're in the sleeper cars, you already have your meals included, so you just have to worry about deciding what meal you're going to have next or what food you're going to pick for each meal.
Next one is that it's a good alternative to flying or driving, and we've really been flying more than we want to recently, and we just don't like it. When we end up flying Amtrak, it's such an easier process. You just show up to the station, check in your bag quickly, wait for the train, you board. There's nothing to deal with. There's no problem. There's no big hassle. And driving also, we just drove across the country. That seemed like a good idea at the time, but when we were done, we were like, ooh, we wish we would have taken a few more trains.
For sure. I think the timing, people always say, "Oh, flying so much faster." If you're only calculating the actual flight time, there's so much more involved with flying than we calculate. You have to calculate how long it's going to take you to get to the airport. Most people do not live 30 minutes from the airport. Most people live an hour or more from the airport that they're leaving from. You have to get there at least a couple hours early to get, checked in, drop your bag, get through security. Even if you don't have to drop a bag because you don't do, check-in bags, and even if you have pre-check or whatever and you get through security quickly, you still have to get there early enough, because nowadays there's so many people flying that those lines are getting longer and longer by the day. So calculate all that in, plus your flight time, plus your arrival and getting to your destination. It really is a much bigger difference than you think when you calculate that.
Next pro that we have is we get to meet a ton of other fellow passengers. This kind of thing doesn't really happen on a plane. Think about it. You're on a plane. You might talk to the person next to you, but that's about it. Even then, that usually doesn't happen. But you're not walking around the plane talking to people. But on the train, you can walk around the train and talk to people. And there are breaks where you can get off the train. You'll meet people just kind of walking around. You'll meet people in the dining car. It's a more communal, social experience than being on a plane, and one that is quite a bit more fun.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. The other really cool thing about it too is like the staff interactions as well as meeting passengers. There's some really cool things that you'll see along the way, and I think it's cool that the conductors will get on and share different things with you along the way, or just chat with you if they see you like in the observation car, or even a lot of times we've chatted up with a lot of our room attendants too, and they have all kinds of really helpful information or just really cool stories of things that happened on the train or things they saw from the train. So that's pretty cool too.
And if you're in a sleeper car, you do have a guaranteed window, and you're going to be able to see a different view of America from the train. If you are in coach, you may not be sitting next to the window. You may not have a chance to see everything you want to see. You will have access to the observation car if there is one, but in a sleeper car, you'll have a guaranteed window in your room, and that will afford you being able to see some great views.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of my favorite things about riding the trains is the view that you get. It's so different than what you get from driving, and obviously you see almost nothing from the plane. So it is really a cool experience and kind of a little closer taste into some neighborhoods that you wouldn't normally see in some of the cities, especially some of the big cities. It's pretty cool, some of the things that you see from the train.
Okay, so here's the truth part about the video, the truth about sleeper cars. What we've said now is true, but people really want to hear about what the cons are and shed some truth to that. So we're going to do that now. The first truth is that the rooms are very, very small. If you've never been in one, the first time you get on the train and you go to your roomette, you'll probably be shocked, especially if it's a superliner, which they're smaller than the Viewliner. You'll be shocked at the size, and you'll be shocked, the person sleeping on the upper berth will be shocked at how little room there is between the bed and the top of the train. It's barely enough to roll around in. You certainly can't sit up. And if you get in there the wrong way, it's going to be hard to get back down.
Yeah, I think that's the part. I remember the very first time we rode Amtrak sleeper car, and the plan all along was you were going to sleep in the bottom bunk and I was going to sleep in the top bunk. No big deal. I didn't think anything of that until we got on the train. And it was fine up until we put that top bunk down. And I was like, that's not very much space. And I'm claustrophobic. So I was like, that's not very much space. Then I crawl up there, and I don't know, I didn't last very long. Was it like 2-3 seconds?
Not long at all.
Before I flipped around and started crawling right back out of the space. It is very small. I very much so appreciate that Rob is okay and always willing to sleep in that top bunk when we're in roomettes, because it is a very tight space. And the other thing is sometimes it's hard to even climb up there too for some people. If you have certain mobility issues, it can be hard to get up to that top bunk. So things can be a little bit complicated. It is tight. There's not a lot of places to put things. Everything is really confined.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind it at all being up there, but I don't have an issue with claustrophobia. So that's probably the thing we hear most when we're talking to people on the train is, "Whew, we didn't know it was going to be as small as or as tight as it was up there." It's pretty tight. If you're any bigger than me, it's going to be real tight. So yeah, that's a definite con. So next one is that it can be quite expensive, and the price has really gone up. It didn't used to be as expensive as it is today. Like when we were riding the trains 3-4 years ago, it seemed like the prices were substantially lower, but they have gone up in price, and it can be quite pricey.
Yeah, it's really challenging anymore because, like I said, when we first started riding, it was significantly lower pricing. Like, I want to say it was less than half of what we're paying now. And even now, we try to never book with just the flat rate. We try to use a companion coupon or some kind of discount coupon or points, because traveling at full price of what they're charging is really expensive. And honestly, at that point, just take the pain and struggle of the airport, sometimes to get places, because it can be really prohibitive to ride the train with the way the costs have increased on the fares for the sleeper cars.
Yeah, we pay for all of our own rides, so we know the pricing. You can offset that some by having the Amtrak credit card and getting points and getting quite a few of your rides for free, which is what we do. Still, though, when you pay that cash rate, especially if you're trying to get a bedroom, it can be quite pricey. Next one is that the privacy can be negated if something isn't working on the train. And when I say if something isn't working, I do mean when something isn't working. Because these are old trains. These are not brand new trains. These are old trains. And I'm not going to say every time or even a majority of the time, but maybe 30% of the time something is going to go wrong. Like the air conditioning isn't working properly, or one of the toilets isn't working properly in your train car, and something just goes wrong. Or a lot of times the speaker won't work properly and you can't hear the announcements. So if the air is not working really well, then you may have to leave sometimes it works in the hallway, but it doesn't really work that well in the car, in the actual room that you're in. So in that case, you'll have to leave the door open, which kind of negates the privacy, and that just becomes a problem and a hassle after a while.
Yeah, it has been really hard. We have been in them before where we have the air conditioning hasn't worked, and you have to leave. Not just sometimes you can just close the curtain, like if the speaker's not working, so that you can hear the speaker out in the hallway. But if the air conditioning is not working, you can't close the curtain. You have to keep it open, because otherwise you're not going to get any airflow in there. So it makes it really challenging, I think. You can't always count on that privacy, basically. The other thing too, kind of the privacy vein, sometimes you have really early arrivals into a place. Sometimes you arrive at 7:30 in the morning or whatever, and maybe you're still asleep. Well, something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that if your train is getting into the final station, the terminus station, a lot of times, or every time, the attendant will need to get into your room before the train arrives to the station to remake the beds and everything in there with new sheets, and you're going to have to leave the room. So you're going to have to get up earlier, and you don't know what time that is. So it kind of complicates things because you don't know what time they're going to be coming around. So many people on some of the recent rides that we did were riding Amtrak for the first time, and they were so shocked. They're like, he woke me up at like 6:30 in the morning to get in here and redo the stuff, and then I couldn't lay back down. I had to get dressed. I had to go down, couldn't eat breakfast because I didn't have breakfast. It was just like this whole complicated thing, and it just, they have to make all those beds before the train gets to the station, and it kind of takes away from that whole experience when you're arriving into the station, whatever time that is. It's not only in the early morning. It doesn't matter what time the train is arriving. They're gonna have to get into your room, usually a couple hours, an hour or two before the train arrives to the station.
Yeah, I've never seen that in any other system where they actually come in your room and make up your bed before you get there for the next passenger. that's just weird to me why they do that. And I get sometimes why they do it. They want to get out of there as quickly as possible, but it just doesn't, like, you've paid to have the room for the whole ride, and then they make it up and you can't really use it then after that because you couldn't lay back down. So it's weird. Yeah, I've never seen that on any other system in the world, just Amtrak. I wish they would change that because, it's just not consumer friendly to do that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an uncomfortable situation. Then it also begs the question of the cleanliness too, because they're making the bed up and all that stuff and pillowcases and stuff, and then you're still in the room with the new clean stuff, which seems a little bit odd to me. And I mean, we have found situation where we rode a train one time. I think the video is on here on the channel. We rode a train one time, and Rob had set the wrapper to his protein bar in the shelf up top because the trash is down below. He had eaten it in the night, forgot to get the wrapper and bring it down. Well, we forgot all about it because there was nothing up there. Well, we got off the train, and then, 5 days later, we get back on this exact same train. We ended up in the exact same room, and Rob found his wrapper up on that shelf. It was still up there.
Yeah, it was bad.
We were like, now we have to question the full cleanliness here of if they're ever doing like a full, clean sweep in these rooms, because that wrapper was there for 5 days, you guys. 5 days it sat up there. Nobody saw it. Nobody threw it away. No, like, it wasn't in the back corner, which sometimes happens. You'll find stuff way back in the corner. It was on the front edge.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even hidden.
Yeah, I don't really question the cleanliness. I just assume it's not going to be super cleanly because I think that's the only cleaning that's going on is the attendant cleaning it between passengers. There's not like okay, we're going to get this to the station and do a deep cleaning ever, and that's why it can be dirty. So that's just the truth. This is the video of truth, right? So that's what it is. The meals can feel repetitive after a while. We've done a lot of vacations on this channel. You can see where, we'll do like 5 trains in a row. And there's really only 3 or 4 choices for dinner. So maybe 1 or 2 of them you don't like. So you're going to be eating the same one of 2 things for 17 days. That gets repetitive. It's not too bad if you're just on one train. When you start to string trains together, we've met a lot of other people doing that along the way, it does get repetitive.
Yeah, I think at one point there was a series of trains we were on. I think we were on 4 different trains, and they were basically in a row on a vacation we were doing around the U.S. And I do remember talking to several other people who were apparently doing the same type of thing, and they were like, I don't think I can eat another flat iron steak. I just can't do it. They're like, I'm going to go down to the snack car, the cafe car, and get something from there, because I got to change this up. And we actually ended up getting something at one of the fresh air breaks in the station that was a little bit longer. We could run and get something because you've only got so many choices. Again, that's one of the things that, they do really well in Canada on Via Rail, because they rotate the meals. So you don't have the same choices every single day. Whereas with, Amtrak, you have the exact same choices every single day. You're on a train ride that's, let's say you're on the Texas Eagle, that's the longest one. You're on it for 4 days. You're eating you have the exact same choices every single day.
Mm-hmm. Which is better than other parts of the world where there is no food. So
true.
That is half good, half bad. Next con is that you'll likely be late. The trains are almost never on time. I can count on one hand the times we've gotten in early. That almost never happens. So that's just a bad thing. Like, you can't, because it really trickles down to you and to your pocketbook, because you really have to plan on then spending the night in the city before you can take off on the next train or the next flight or a cruise. If, like in places like Switzerland, it's like clockwork. You could literally book a train to get to a cruise with like an hour to spare, and you basically be guaranteed it will get there on the minute. Same with Japan. The trains arrive like to the minute of when they're supposed to be there every single time. And it's just like a huge problem if they don't. So Amtrak, so if people come over from Japan or Switzerland to America, they're in for a big shock.
Such a big shock. One time we had the first time we were switching trains, it had us switching to a different platform. This was in Switzerland. We had a vacation we did there, and we had to switch to a different platform, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's only like 3 minutes between this train arriving and that train leaving, and we have to find this other platform somehow. We got there with plenty of time. We sat on the train for at least 1 full minute before it actually left. Absolutely no problem. Had no problem finding the next platform, mind you, in a completely different language. Had no problem finding the platform, and it was a big station too. I think it was the one in Zurich, if I remember right, where we were switching. So it was a pretty big sized station. It wasn't small, but we were able to find it and still had about a minute to spare. We were like, I can't believe this. We were both really getting stressed about it because it was such a small window. I was like, how is that even possible? Why would they book this?
Yeah, it's astonishing that in other countries they book you a connection with less than 5 minutes to get to the next train, and you always make it. And on Amtrak, you can't even feel safe with a 6-hour connection. You likely won't make it. So that's just kind of crazy. It's a big con. The next one is that it does add to the cost, but tips are not required, but they are basically expected. I think in America that's kind of the thing. And I do think it's worth it to give people tips. It is a very hard job, but just keep in mind it is going to add some to the cost, which is already pretty high to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, the most consistent good service that we've gotten has been from attendants, from room attendants on the trains. They are pretty consistent across the board. Just really less than a handful worth of attendants that we've had on hundreds of rides that did not do a great job. We still tipped them, but just so you know, it is worth it, like you said. They do a great job. It is probably the hardest job on the train because, you know, the engineer who's driving the train, they swap those out every few hours, so it's not even the same person the whole time. The room attendant is one of the few people that stays on the train the entire time. They don't switch, and their sleeping hours are really small because they're always having to get up and do things and, you know, let people off the train and all those types of things. So it's a really tough job, and it definitely does deserve a little something extra.
Yeah, so we hope that this has shed some light on some of the truth about riding sleeper cars on Amtrak, some of the pros, some of the cons. We hope you liked the video, hope it was helpful. If it was, please give us a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and we will see you on the next video.